Let's turn to foreign policy. Should Ukraine prepare for less aid from the United States after you're sworn into office?
Yeah, probably. Sure.
You've said you can end the war in
24 We're in for
350
billion, and Europe is in for 100 billion. Why isn't Europe in for the same as us? The one thing that should happen is that Europe should come in they should equalize. And, you know, Biden, all he had to do, like I did with NATO, I said, you got to pay your bills. They weren't paying their bills. And as you know, the Secretary General said, President Trump got $600 billion, now 640 to be exact. And I used to use the 400 billion number. He corrected me. He said, no, you actually got $641 billion put in, because I said you have to pay your bills. We were paying for NATO. And you know why I got the money? Because I asked for it. It wasn't that complicated. Europe is in for a fraction. And war with Russia is more important for Europe than it is for us. It's important for everybody, but it's more important for Europe than it is for us.
And you've said
we have a little thing called an ocean in between us.
You said you can end the war in 24 hours. You've even said you want to try to end it before you're sworn into office.
I'm trying to end it.
You're actively trying to?
I am.
Have you talked to President Putin?
No, I have not.
You haven't talked to President Putin since you've been
elected?
elected?
No. Well, I don't want to say that, but I haven't spoken to him recently.
So you've spoken to President Putin since you've been elected?
I don't want to say that. I don't want to say anything about that, because I don't want to do anything that could impede the negotiation.
But you
I want to stop
talked
it.
about
Let me
the
tell you
other
what I
world
have talked
leaders.
about. Let me tell
Okay.
you. There are people being killed in that war at levels that nobody's ever seen before. You have to go back to the Second World War, and even that, if you take a look at, and you know what it is? It's the soldiers largely. The cities have been emptied out and demolished. The country has been demolished. If I won that election, which you know how I feel about it, I won't get into it because we don't need to start that argument. I think it's an easy argument. It was really proven even more conclusively by the win that I had on this one.
But you did go to court, sir.
Well, that's your opinion, but
okay.
I disagree with it. Had I kept control, number one, Israel wouldn't have happened. Number two, Ukraine would have never happened. It would have never happened, Ukraine, Russia. But the number of people that are being killed, soldiers, young, beautiful soldiers, hundreds of thousands of people are being killed. And, you know, it's very interesting. It's level, totally level. The battlefields, totally level. You know what's happening? Yeah. The only thing that stops a bullet, you know what it is a body, a human body. And the people that are being killed, hundreds of thousands on both sides. Russia's lost probably 500,000. Ukraine's lost higher than they say, probably 400,000. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of bodies laying all over fields. It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen, and it should have never been allowed to happen. Biden should have been able to stop it.
Sir, will the United States stay in NATO while you're in office?
In where?
NATO. Do you commit that the United States will remain a member of NATO while you're in office?
Again, they have to pay their bills. If they pay their bills, absolutely.
But not if they don't pay their bills.
But NATO's taken advantage of us because we were look, two things. Number one, they take advantage of us on trade, meaning the European nations, okay, like terrible. They don't take our cars. They don't take our food product. They don't take anything. It's a disgrace. And on top of that, we defend them. So it's a double whammy. So let me just tell you, I was able to get hundreds of billions of dollars put into NATO just by a tough attitude. I said to the countries, I'm not going to protect you unless you pay. And they started paying. And that amounted to more than $600 billion. That's a big thing. Otherwise, they wouldn't even be fighting. They wouldn't have any money to fight. If they're paying their bills, and if I think they're they're treating us fairly, the answer is absolutely, I'd stay with NATO.
But if not, you would consider the possibility of
absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Let's turn to the Middle East now, sir. There are still American hostages being held in Gaza. Yeah. You said this week that if the hostages aren't released before Inauguration Day, quote, there will be all hell to pay.
Correct.
What exactly did you mean? And do you still think that the hostages are alive?
I'm not a big believer in the fact that there are too many of them living, sadly, because I've seen the way they've been treated. I talk about the young girl that was pulled by her hair violently and thrown into the back of a car like she was a sack of potatoes. And I said, you know, that's hatred. And then I said, how did that young girl do? Beautiful young girl just dragged by her hair. You remember, blood pouring all over her body. You can imagine the parents thrown into the back of a car by some horrible guy. And I said, how is she? She's dead. She died, sir. I don't think you have as many. I mean, I hate to say it. I think you have far fewer hostages than people think.
Really? Have
That's
you
what I think.
it's.
It's only my opinion, but
Okay.
I've been right on just about everything.
Are you going to pressure Prime Minister Netanyahu, with whom you have a very good relationship, to end the war in Gaza?
Yeah, sure.
And
I
have
want
you
him to
already
end it.
started that process?
I want him to end it, but you got to have a victory. People forget about October 7th. That was as violent. And you know what's happening? I noticed that a lot of people are saying, oh, it never really happened. That's like the Holocaust. You know, you have Holocaust deniers. Now you have October 7th deniers, and it just happened. No, October 7th happened. And I've seen the pictures. What happened is horrible.
If China invades Taiwan on your watch, are you committed to defending Taiwan?
I never say.
Still won't say.
I never say because I have to negotiate things, right?
Can you just say if you'll defend
prefer
it? I'm
that
not
they
saying if
don't.
the U.S. military.
I'd prefer that they don't do it. I have a very good relationship with President Xi. We have been communicating with each other.
Since you were elected?
Yes.
And you sent that message?
Since like 3 days ago. Yes, we communicate.
And you sent that message to him, don't invade
We didn't
Taiwan?
talk about that.
Okay.
We talked about other things. But I have a very good relationship, and I hope he doesn't do it.
This week, a federal court upheld a law that could result in TikTok being banned. You said you're going to rescue TikTok when you get into office. Are you going to take steps to protect it?
Yeah, and as you know, I use TikTok very successfully in my campaign. I have a man named TikTok Jack. He was very effective, obviously, because I won youth by 30%. All Republicans lose youth. I don't know why. Maybe it's changing. And last time we were down 30% with youth. This time we're up 35% with youth. And I use TikTok, so I can't really, I can't totally hate it. It was very effective. But I will say this, if you do that, something else is going to come along and take its place. And maybe that's not fair. What they're doing, and really what the judge actually said was that you can't have Chinese companies. In other words, they have the right to ban it if you can prove that Chinese companies own it. That's what the judge actually said.
So are you going to try to protect TikTok, just very quick, once you're in office?
I'm going to try and make it so that other companies don't become an even bigger monopoly.
Okay.
Because that's what happens.
We're winding down, and I know you have a plane to catch.
I do.